Emotional intelligence. Become smarter and more successful by controlling your emotions. Written by Samira Eaton. Narrated by Carlton Smith. Chapter 1. What is the definition of emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence describes the capability to identify and manage somebody's own emotions and the feelings of others. Emotional intelligence is generally said to include, at the very least, 3 abilities: emotional awareness, or the capability to determine and name somebody's own feelings, the ability to harness those feelings and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving, and the ability to manage emotions, which includes both managing an individual's own feelings when needed and helping others to do the same. There is no validated psychometric test or scale for emotional intelligence as there is for G, the general intelligence factor, and many say that emotional intelligence is, because of that, not an actual construct, but a way of defining social abilities that pass other names. In spite of this criticism, the concept of emotional intelligence, at times referred to as psychological ratio, or EQ, has gotten wide acceptance. In the last few years, some companies have even integrated emotional intelligence tests into their application and interview process, on the notion that somebody high in emotional intelligence would make a better leader or colleague. While some studies have found a link between emotional intelligence and job efficiency, many others have revealed no correlation, and the lack of a clinically valid scale makes it challenging to really gauge or forecast a person's emotional intelligence on the job or in the home. What does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? An emotionally intelligent individual is both highly mindful of his or her own emotions, even negativity, aggravation, unhappiness, or something more subtle, and able to determine and manage them. Such people are specifically tuned in to the emotions that others experience. It's reasonable that a sensitivity to psychological signals, both from within oneself and from someone's social environment, could make one a much better friend, parent, leader, or romantic partner. Luckily, these abilities can be sharpened. Chapter 2. Why you have a need for emotional intelligence to be successful at school. Parents or caretakers, instructors, and students all wish to know what personal qualities will help students perform well in their studies. While teaching quality, resources, and other ecological factors help students attain their best, students' personal qualities can give them an edge over others. Past research has found 2 personal qualities that are very important for student success. The first quality is intelligence. Being clever enough to become really good at algebra and/or coding is obviously crucial for success. The second quality is conscientiousness. Being organized enough to remember your homework and organize your notes is another clear advantage. It's not hard to see why being clever and striving would help students get even better grades and higher test scores. Students' IQ scores explain about 15% of the differences in accomplishment. Conscientiousness clarifies about 5% of such distinctions. But research shows that emotional intelligence can also give students a critical edge. Emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, use, understand, and manage feelings. Some emotional intelligence tests use rating scales. For example, test takers might rate their contract with statements like, "I know the nonverbal messages others send." Other emotional intelligence analyses straight gauge psychological abilities with skill-based tasks. This is an example. Test takers would need to determine which feeling is expressed in a face. Our new term paper showed that mentally intelligent students get much better exam results and better grades. That meta-analysis summed up 1,246 research discoveries on the link between emotional intelligence and academic performance. While these findings could not directly show a cause and effect relationship between emotion-related qualities and efficiency, they do reveal significant associations between them. In a general sense, we discovered that differences in students' emotional intelligence could represent about 4% of distinctions in achievement. However, certain kinds of emotional intelligence were more highly associated with accomplishment than others. Skill-based jobs of emotional intelligence represented 6% of distinctions in scholastic performance, although self-ratings of psychological abilities accounted for 1% of differences. But what is also the case is that certain types of abilities appeared to be particularly considerable, consisting of comprehending emotions and managing emotions. The students who can comprehend emotions can precisely identify their own and others' emotions. They know what triggers feelings, how emotions change, and how emotions integrate. Students that can manage their emotions know very well how to control their emotions in demanding circumstances. They also know what to do to maintain good social relationships with other people. Feeling management ability represented 7% of distinctions in scholastic efficiency. Emotion understanding skills accounted for 12%. That is, steps of feeling understanding abilities appear to represent student success to a greater level than procedures of conscientiousness, 5%, and practically as much as IQ scores, 15%. Why would emotional intelligence be very important for success in education? There are 3 likely reasons that emotional intelligence relates to higher academic efficiency. First of all, emotional intelligence helps students deal with feelings in the scholastic environment. Students can feel anxious about tests, feel disappointed with poor results, feel annoyed when they strive but can't accomplish what they want, or feel tired when the subject is not interesting. Having the ability to control these emotions so they don't interfere with learning helps students achieve. Second, emotional intelligence can help students maintain their relationships with instructors, students, and family. Preserving close personal relationships means they can get in touch with good friends and instructors to help them when they struggle, can learn a lot from others in group work, or can contact others for emotional support. And third, liberal arts subjects like history, literature, etc. require some level of emotional and social comprehension. For instance, the universal themes and character development in literature requires understanding human motivations and feelings. What do emotionally intelligent students do in a different way that allows them to succeed at school? Mentally intelligent students know more about emotions, and this makes studying arts or liberal arts subjects easier for them. But what they do in a different way is generally how they manage their feelings. There are 3 ways emotion control would be different for high emotional intelligence versus low emotional intelligence students. First of all, emotionally smart students use better procedures to manage their feelings. We know that some procedures are more efficient than others. For example, focusing on negative emotions, rumination, is linked to even worse outcomes, whereas searching the bright side, positive reappraisal, is linked to better results. We know that emotionally smart people normally report using more of the better processes, like positive reappraisal, less of the even worse processes, like rumination. Second, mentally smart students might pick strategies that are better suited or effective for the circumstance they're in. That is, they could be more susceptible to crucial specifics of the situation and thus be more flexible in their responses. We now know that good reappraisal is connected to well-being in unmanageable situations, where nothing can be done against the stress, but not controllable circumstances, where maybe it's better to change the circumstance than to change the way you think of it. Maybe mentally smart people are more sensitive to whether situations are in their control or not, and choose their strategies accordingly. And last but not least, emotionally smart students may carry out the techniques better. This is an example. When using positive reappraisal, a mentally smart student might be able to think of a possible positive spin or silver lining. By contrast, a low EI student may only have the ability to think an unclear or unrealistic positive view of things, which would be less efficient for making them feel better. How could this go in a student's day? Think of a theoretical student, Cooper, who's proficient at math and science, but has low emotional intelligence abilities. She actually has some difficulty seeing it when others are agitated, anxious, or miserable. She does not know how individuals' feelings may cause future behavior. She doesn't know what to do to manage her own feelings. A common day of school for Cooper shows how her low emotional intelligence can disrupt a student's capability to attain at school. Cooper gets to school. Her buddy Alice is staring at the ground with her arms folded. Her eyes are a little red and puffy. Cooper tells her about a cool TV show she watched last night. Alice does not seem interested, so Cooper goes to speak with somebody else. Because Cooper has poor capability to view Alice's emotions, she has not observed anything is wrong. Alice is mad that Cooper didn't seem to show any sympathy for her. Alice says to Cooper that she isn't a buddy she can rely on. Cooper enters the classroom. The class is supposed to examine the motivations and emotions of the characters in the book they read. Cooper finds this very hard. She's not able to answer tons of the questions. Alice, in some cases, helps Cooper with things like this, but she seethes at Cooper today and refuses to help. Alice rolls her eyes and says that the questions are simple. Cooper feels bad that she can't do the work that other students seem to find so easy. She's also upset that Alice seethes at her. She can't appear to shake these feelings, and she's not able to concentrate on her math problems in the next class. Just because of her low emotional management ability, Cooper can't recuperate from her negative emotions. This example shows how taking notice of building a student's emotional intelligence can help them learn, attain, and succeed at school. Chapter 3. Simple Ways to Deepen Your Emotional Intelligence. Emotional intelligence has definitely become a subject at the forefront of human resources workshops, leadership groups, and business training sessions, and there are great reasons for that. If you can function well emotionally in a company, your work efficiency can be that much better. So, it makes sense. Evidence indicates that emotional intelligence plays a big role in work environment efficiency. Individuals with high emotional intelligence perform better and generally experience better psychological and physical well-being. Emotional intelligence parts. The principle of emotional intelligence was made popular by a writer named Daniel Goleman. His 1996 bestseller, Emotional Intelligence, introduced it to the public. The idea was originally proposed by John Mayer and Peter Salovey in 1990. The model of emotional intelligence proposed by Salovey and Mayer includes 4 parts. Perceive emotions in oneself and others precisely. Intel. Use feelings to facilitate thinking. Understand feelings, emotional language, and the signals conveyed by feeling. Manage feelings to get specific objectives. Studies have shown that emotional intelligence can be learned. It has become a billion-dollar market, as training programs have shown really effective in helping people raise their emotional intelligence and perform at their best. but you don't really need a formal training program to boost your own emotional intelligence. Here are 7 simple ways to enhance your emotional intelligence. 1. Label your feelings. People seldom like to talk about their feelings, in spite of the fact that our feelings affect every choice we make. Lots of people are much more comfortable saying things like, "I had butterflies in my stomach," or "a lump in my throat," than what they're really feeling, which is usually sadness or anxiety. Practice labeling your feelings with real feeling words: frustrated, restless, dissatisfied, and so on. Look at yourself a few times a day and pay more attention to how you're feeling, even if you don't announce it out loud. 2. Consider how your emotions influence your judgment. Now that you understand how you're feeling, require time to think about how these feelings are affecting your own thoughts and habits. If you're miserable, it may cause you to be afraid of rejection, and you may underestimate your chances of success. Then again, if you're overly thrilled about an opportunity, you may overstate your chances. That could lead to taking risks without analyzing the potential effects or drawbacks. To make better decisions, you really need to recognize how your emotions are impacting your judgment. In doing so, you're going to balance the outlook of your own reasoning and emotion, and therefore be better equipped to make choices. 3. Decide whether your emotions are a good friend or an opponent. Every emotion we experience has the power to be valuable or unhelpful sometimes. The exact same feeling can impact us in either a favorable or negative way, depending on how we use it. And when you decide on what you're feeling at any moment, next, consider whether that feeling is being a good friend to you or an opponent at that time. Anger could be a good friend when it helps you defend oppression. It could be an enemy, however, when you're getting in a conversation with your boss. Being sad can be useful when it reminds you to honor a person you no longer have. However, it could be an opponent when it gets in the way of your inspiration in life. If you happen to realize that sadness is working as an opponent, you must do what you can to regulate your feelings. Just try to experiment with different coping methods to help you do this. Maybe meditation for several minutes can help you calm down. Later, even a simple activity like walking around the block might help you comfort. 4. Be accountable for your own feelings. Saying that your colleague makes you feel bad about yourself or blaming your boss for putting you in a bad mood indicates that you're letting other individuals control your emotions. Your capability to react to your emotions includes your accepting full responsibility for them. You're the only person who can choose to react in a certain way in specific situations and to others. Remember this anytime you're lured to think another person is dragging you down mentally. So instead of thinking, "he's making me mad," try something like, "I don't like what he's doing now, and I'm getting mad." 5. See other people's emotions. Your understanding of how others are feeling is one of the key elements to raising your emotional intelligence. Focusing on this will stop you from disrupting somebody you disagree with or jumping into an argument. Pay attention to other people's emotional states. If you can recognize how somebody's feeling, then you're going to better comprehend how that feeling is likely to impact that individual's perception and behavior. 6. Limit screen time. Spending way too much time on your digital devices will hinder your relationships. In romantic relationships, studies have found that having a smartphone present while you're spending time with another person can prevent closeness and wear down trust. Too much screen time can also disrupt a person's ability to read or understand emotions. And as you read earlier, this is just one of the 4 critical components of emotional intelligence. A 2014 research study released in Computer Systems and Human Behavior found that preteens who spend 5 days at an outdoor camp without access to their digital devices significantly enhanced their capability to read other individuals' emotions. This improvement of comprehending nonverbal feelings happened in just 5 days without their electronic devices. Setting healthy limitations on your technology would probably be a really good idea. Don't have your phone out when you're talking face-to-face with people. Reserve periods throughout the day when you won't use your phone, perhaps the first hour after you wake up, lunch break, or before bed. Doing a digital detox every so often can actually do you some good. Some days without your electronics will better equip you in your ability to read other people's emotions. 7. Review your progress. At the end of each day, assess your progress. Did you interact well with a frustrated coworker? Acknowledge this of yourself. But then also notice the areas in which you need to improve. Did you get defensive about some rough feedback? Or did anxiety prevent you from speaking with your boss? Beware to learn from those errors and do better in the future. There's always room to sharpen your skills when it comes to emotional intelligence. Enrolling in a training program can help you if you're feeling stuck. And you can always read a book or work with a coach to help you improve your emotional intelligence much more. Chapter 4. Master your emotions with new tools influenced by neuroscience. A lot of us really believe that our feelings are fixed entities that are hardwired into our brains or instantly activated by circumstances that provoke them. Rejection makes us feel bad. Success makes us feel good. Or some people are just angry people, while others are really happy spirits. We also might believe that feelings can be controlled just by changing our thinking. Neuroscientists claim otherwise. Northeastern University neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett has done comprehensive research into how emotions work in the brain and has come to the conclusion that feelings and thoughts are not separate processes. Instead, the entire brain actively constructs both thoughts and emotions by billions of neurons signifying each other. Our brains are plastic and can change with new ideas. Emotional classifications. According to Dr. Feldman Barrett, our brains are wired to make predictions that help our survival. This is safe, but that is very risky. Or, this will bring me satisfaction, that will bring me pain. She reasons that the way our brains analyze and categorize these predictions is what we experience as feeling. This suggests that we have an option of seeing our emotions concerning broad classifications or developing a more carefully nuanced understanding of what we're feeling. She suggests that understanding and describing our emotions in terms of more fine-grained classifications, or in other words, miserable, exhausted, anxious, or mad, versus just feeling bad, helps us become more mentally intelligent and better at reacting to them. Dr. Feldman Barrett gives an example to highlight this point. She specifies that when we just see our emotions as feeling awesome or feeling bad, we have limited response alternatives. We would typically do more of the things that help us feel awesome and keep away from the things that we relate to crappy emotions. That makes us less mentally intelligent than we really need to be. What if the thing that feels bad today is actually great for you and results in future amazing feelings? Meaning striving to pass a test. Or what if something feels awesome initially, but then feels really bad in the future? Like drinking way too much alcohol, or dating a narcissist. Or maybe something feels both awesome and bad at the same time, like giving a discussion. Additionally, how might we see the difference between things that feel only a little bad, like not getting enough sleep one night, and those that feel significantly lousy, like having an extreme migraine? If we comprehend these complexities, we have more of a chance at mastering our feelings or acting more flexibly in ways in which best fit the circumstance. Emotional granularity. Dr. Feldman Barrett coined the term emotional granularity to define how much we specify our feelings in broad classifications versus making fine-grained distinctions between different feelings. If you have high emotional granularity, you might show different amazing feelings like contentment, enjoyment, interest, pride, happiness, love, thankfulness, compassion, etc. Or you may specify your bad feelings as afraid, bored, frightened, furious, inflamed, jealous, ashamed, etc. A study on emotional granularity or differentiation supports the idea that it's a kind of emotional intelligence that can improve long-term health and well-being. People who have more of it check out physicians less usually, use fewer medications, and have less frequent hospitalizations for illness. More fine-tuned expression of feelings is also associated with better social and emotional functioning overall. Granularity permits you to react to your feelings more flexibly, taking into consideration the situation, your objectives, and your body's energy needs. Makes you not as likely to drink alcohol as a way of dealing with tension, and not as likely to react with aggression to justifications or upsetting actions of others. Other research links psychological granularity with a lessened neural reaction to rejection and less anxiety, stress, and depressive thoughts. In a research study with spider phobics that were exposed to spiders, describing emotions in detailed, nuanced ways. For example, this huge hairy spider is revolting and both terrifies and interests me, worked better than 2 other strategies for lowering fear and promoting technique. The other 2 methods were cognitive reappraisal, meaning the spider is safe, or distraction, concentrating on something else. Results lasted for, at the very least, 1 week beyond the experiment. Perhaps the emotional granularity strategy worked better simply because it's more of a technique than an avoidance method. It includes actively dealing with emotions, rather than getting away or attempting to make them disappear. Tools to increase emotional intelligence using granularity. Below are some tools for using granularity to regulate feelings. 1. Tweak your feelings. When you feel inflamed with somebody in your life or are judging them, try to look more particularly at what you feel and why you feel that way. Does their bragging make you feel insecure, or do you feel restless that they're squandering your time, or powerless that they will not listen to you? Are you concerned that they're acting self-destructively, or scared that they do not value your advice? Each of these descriptions can cause a much different coping response that best addresses your underlying need. 2. Express your feelings in words. Jot down your emotions in a diary and try to connect them to the events that provoke them. You can do this with both positive and negative feelings. Research by James Pennebaker, Laura King, and co-workers, as well as the existing author, suggests that expressive writing can improve health and well-being over days, weeks, and months. 3. Explore inconsistent or complicated feelings. Dig deep to discover the intricacy or contradictions in your emotional reaction and those of others. For example, when I get home from a trip, my pet dog waits eagerly at the door, barks loudly when she sees me, and wags her tail. I analyze this as meaning she's very happy and ecstatic to see me, but also wants to let me know that she seethes and she's sad that I went away. She feels great relief that I'm back because she was frightened of being by herself and puzzled about where I went. Chapter 5. The Top 5 Keys to Boost Your Emotional Intelligence. Emotional intelligence, EQ or EI, can be specified as the capability to comprehend, manage, and effectively express an individual's own feelings and engage and navigate successfully with those of others. According to TalentSmart, 90% of high entertainers at the office possess high EQ, while 80% of low entertainers have low EQ. Emotional intelligence is absolutely essential in the formation, development, maintenance, and enhancement of close personal relationships. Unlike IQ, which doesn't change substantially over a lifetime, our EQ can develop and increase with our desire to learn and grow. 1. The ability to handle a person's own negative feelings. We become what we think about all day long. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Maybe no aspect of EQ is more vital than our ability to effectively manage our own negative feelings so that they do not overwhelm us and impact our judgment. In order to change the way we feel about a circumstance, we should first change the way we think of it. Here are just 2 examples. A. Decreasing negative personalization. When you feel negatively about somebody's conduct, stay away from leaping into a negative conclusion immediately. Instead, think of several ways of seeing the circumstance before reacting. For example, I may be lured to think my friend didn't return my call because she's neglecting me, or I can consider the possibility that she's been really busy. When we keep away from customizing other people's habits, we can perceive their expressions more objectively. Most people do what they do because of them more than because of us. Widening our perspective can lower the possibility of misconception. B. Lowering the fear of rejection. One reliable way to manage your fear of rejection is to supply yourself with several options in essential situations, so that no matter what happens, you have strong options going forward. Keep away from putting all of your eggs in one basket emotionally by recognizing a viable fallback and also a plan C should plan A not work out. For example, increased fear of rejection. I'm requesting my dream job. I'm going to be devastated if they don't employ me. Reduced fear of rejection. I'm requesting 3 interesting positions. If one does not pan out, there are 2 more I would receive pretty well. 2. The ability to stay cool under pressure. The majority of us experience some level of tension in life. How we manage pressure circumstances can make the difference between being poised versus tired. Here are some quick pointers. A. If you feel worried and anxious, put cold water on your face and get some fresh air. Cool temperature can help reduce our anxiety level. Stay away from caffeinated drinks, which can stimulate your anxiety. B. If you feel afraid, depressed, or discouraged, try intense aerobic exercises. Energize yourself. The way we use our body influences significantly the way we feel. As the saying goes, motion dictates emotion. As you experience the vitality of your body, your confidence will also grow. C. If you feel overloaded, confused, stuck, or unimaginative, go outdoors and clear your head. Go into nature and surround yourself in colors of green and blue, which have a relaxing effect. You should find a scenic view and keep an eye out into the distance. Go for a walk. Take some deep breaths. Clear out your brain. Return with a fresh view on life. 3. The capability to stay proactive, not reactive in the face of a challenging person. Most of us encounter unreasonable people in our lives. We might be stuck with a challenging person at work or at home. It's simple to let a difficult person impact us and ruin our day. What are some of the keys to staying proactive in such circumstances? Here are 3 quick pointers. A. When you feel upset with someone, before you say something you may later be sorry for, take a deep breath and count gradually to 10. In most situations, by the time you reach 10, you would have figured out a better way of communicating the problem so that you can decrease rather than make complex the issue. If you're still upset after counting to 10, Take a time out if possible and revisit the problem after you calm down. B. Another method to lower reactivity is to attempt to put yourself in the challenging person's shoes, even for just a minute. For example, consider the individual you're dealing with and complete the sentence. It must not be easy. My child is being so resistant. It must not be easy to deal with his school and social pressures. My employer is actually demanding. It must not be easy to have such high expectations put on her efficiency by management. To be more certain, empathetic statements don't excuse undesirable behavior. The point is to tell yourself that people do what they do just because of their own problems. As long as we're being realistic and considerate, difficult behaviors from others say a lot more about them than they do about us. By depersonalizing, we can see the circumstance more objectively and come up with better ways of solving the problem. C. Set consequence. The ability to determine and assert repercussions is just one of the most essential abilities you can use to stand down a hard individual. Effectively articulated, consequence gives pause to the challenging person and compels her or him to move from infraction to respect. D. Try to find information when that's necessary. If necessary, inquire with the other individual for some clarification on why she's acting the way she does. Ask open-ended questions, such as, "I'm just curious, can you tell me why?" And keep from allegations and judgments. Compare that individual's words with body language and behavior to search for congruency. 4. The ability to be assertive and express tough emotions when necessary. Being who we are requires that we can talk openly about things that are necessary to us, that we take a pure position on where we stand on crucial psychological concerns, and that we clarify the limits of what's acceptable and tolerable to us in a relationship. Harriet Lerner. There are times in all of our lives when it's important to set our limits properly so people understand what our values are. Those can include exercising our right to disagree without being disagreeable, saying no without feeling guilty, setting our own priorities, getting what we paid for, and securing ourselves from pressure and harm. One technique to consider when needing to express tough emotions is the XYZ method. I feel X when you do Y in circumstance Z. Here are several examples. I feel strongly that I have to get recognition from the company based on my contributions. I feel awkward that you expect me to help you over my own priorities. I feel disappointed when you didn't follow through when you told me you would. I feel frustrated when you continue to not take our financial resources seriously. I felt hurt when you teased me at dinner last night. Stay away from using phrases that begin with you and followed by allegation or judgment, like you are, you should, or you really need to. You language followed by such directives puts the listener on the defensive and makes them less likely to be open to what you need to say. 5. The capability to show intimate emotions in close personal relationships. We live in the shelter of each other. Celtic saying. The ability to effectively show and verify tender, loving feelings is vital to preserving close personal relationships. In this particular case, effective means sharing intimate feelings with someone in a proper relationship, in a way that's nourishing and positive, and having the ability to respond agreeably when the other individual does the same. Psychologist Dr. John Gottman calls the expression of intimate emotions bidding. Bidding can be any approach of positive connection between two people preferring a close relationship. For instance, verbal bidding. How are you doing? How are you feeling? I really love you. I appreciate you. I like it when we talk like this. I'm glad we're spending this time together. You're such a buddy. I'm sorry. body language bidding, positive eye contact, hugging, smiling, patting the elbow, arm around the shoulder. Behavioral bidding, offering food or beverage, a tailored card, a thoughtful gift, a needed favor. Understanding listening, taking part in shared activities that develop a closer bond. Dr. Gottman's research shows that close, healthy relationships bid with one another in ways large and small, up to hundreds of times a day. The words and gestures can be a million variations, all of which say, in essence, I care about you, I want to be connected with you, and you're very important in my life. Constant and consistent bidding is important in the maintenance and development of close, personal relationships. It's the vitamin of love. Chapter 6. Emotional intelligence might help you do your job. Scientists have long known that higher general brain power relates to better job performance. General brain power is just one of the best predictors of how people will perform in their jobs. Proof obviously shows that job efficiency relates more strongly to general brain power than to just about any other quality people take to the job. It's more important than personality traits, years of job experience, or education qualifications. Actually, the best estimate is that differences in IQ account for around 25% of the differences between people in job performance. This estimate originates from a meta-analysis, an organized summary of all recognized evidence on the subject, by American organizational psychology scientists Frank Schmidt and John Hunter. So, how does emotional intelligence compare? This is a more complex question than it looks, because there are 3 different views on what emotional intelligence is. Some see emotional intelligence as an ability, the knowledge of how to view, comprehend, and manage emotions, emotional intelligence capabilities. Other people view emotional intelligence as the confidence in your emotional knowledge, the self-beliefs that you can perceive, comprehend, and manage feelings, psychological self-efficacy. Still, some people view emotional intelligence as a broad set of personality types and inspirations that cause emotionally intelligent behavior, quality emotional intelligence. These 3 different types of emotional intelligence show different relationships with job efficiency. Differences in emotional intelligence abilities account for only 3% of the distinctions in job performance, although differences in emotional self-efficacy account for 5%, and differences in quality emotional intelligence account for 22%. Those estimates are also from a meta-analysis, a synopsis across all readily available studies, this time by American organizational psychology researchers Dana Joseph and Daniel Newman. We have to consider what different jobs are like. Let us consider 2 different workers in 2 different jobs, June and Jaren. June writes code for a living. She writes complex algorithms, repairs technical issues, and spends most of her time on a computer system. When she communicates with others, it's typically a result of a time-critical need to complete a job before the server security is breached. It's a complex job, and she's blunt and straight to the point in all her discussions. Jaren has a job at a call center addressing phone calls from people who need recommendation services after natural disasters. Jaren has a list of phone numbers in front of him. While it's fairly basic to find out which services to refer the people to, the people Jaren speaks with are typically distressed and baffled, and in some cases angry about being kept on hold. He needs to stay calm himself, and often tries to make people he talks to feel better. A day at work for Jaren includes a really different set of skills than a day at work for June. The first distinction is that June has a more complicated job than Jaren. Her job includes a high level of information processing. Jobs that are scientific, highly technical, or professional have high job complexity. The job knowledge June needs to do her job is much greater than the job knowledge Jaren needs to do his. The second difference is that Jaren's job needs much more emotional labor than June's. While Jaren is talking to highly stressed out callers, he needs to be mindful about the emotions he expresses. Emotional labor at work is when a worker controls their feelings and expressions as a part of their job. Different jobs require different qualities to succeed. The link between general mental ability and job efficiency depends on the intricacy of the job. For the greatest complexity jobs, like June's, differences in IQ scores can account for 34% of distinctions in job efficiency. For the lowest complexity jobs, like Jaren's, and even easier, distinctions in IQ scores can account for only 5% of the distinctions in job performance. That is, IQ is a lot more essential for high-complexity jobs. The exact same logic applies to emotional intelligence. Being knowledgeable about emotions is only going to help you if your job requires that you labor with emotions. Emotional intelligence is more crucial for jobs that need emotional labor. Emotional intelligence abilities represent 6% of differences in job performance for high psychological labor jobs, but 0% in low psychological labor jobs. Psychological self-efficacy accounts for 8% of the differences in job efficiency for high emotional labor jobs, but 4% for low psychological labor jobs. Trait emotional intelligence accounts for 35% of the distinctions in job performance for high psychological labor jobs, but only 18% for low psychological labor jobs. That is, emotional intelligence is much more essential for high psychological labor jobs. For people who write code in the back room, perhaps emotional intelligence isn't so crucial, but for jobs that concentrate on the feelings of clients, consumers, coworkers, or other workers, emotional intelligence may be pretty crucial. Chapter 7. Does emotional intelligence make an individual smart? Some might view intelligence as how wise an individual is based on her or his job title, education, social status, or perhaps income. A physics professor with a doctorate might be considered as more intelligent than a manual worker without a college degree, but this is not necessarily true. Intelligence not only depends on the mental capability a person possesses, but also on multiple other facets. Intelligence is not just gauged by IQ anymore. Emotional intelligence now plays a major role in determining the success of a person. The physics professor might be referred to as brash, detached, and rushed, while the laborer might be known as kind, patient, and hardworking. These social qualities are very important in determining the overall intelligence of an individual. Emotional intelligence is a human interactive skill, also seen in chimpanzees and bonobos. Laughter is its most apparent expression, which is rarely talked about as such. Laughter is a lot like eating without the calories, and is often referred to by the popular Victor Borge quote, "Laughter is the closest distance between two people." How people control their feelings plays a very large role in their success in society. Who's the boss? Emotional intelligence, when it's developed in a healthy way, isn't only emotional. It also includes mental and cultural knowledge and abilities. Simplistically specified, it's putting oneself in the other person's shoes, but with knowledge and sensitivity. A Harvard graduate, for example, can be viewed as either mature or immature, depending on his or her emotional intelligence. Some say maturity is the capability to feel and reflect without acting. Gauging emotional intelligence. An emotionally intelligent quotient, better called EQ, is the tool used to measure emotional intelligence. Two significant categories can be used to measure EQ, according to John D. Mayer and Associates. 1. Specific capability associated with emotional intelligence, such as the capability to accurately identify feeling in faces. General integrative tests step across certain specific emotional intelligence skills to offer an overall picture of an individual's emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence for success. Emotional intelligence in the work environment has been a hot subject in current literature. Most scientists really believe that emotional intelligence can be enhanced through developing social skills. Characteristics such as listening, practicing, and recognizing body language, embracing distinctions, demonstrating empathy, asking questions that help recognize feelings and emotions, and learning to associate with others are all skills that can be used in the office between staff members and managers. All people process ideas and respond in a different way, but it's how they relate and react to demanding circumstances that may separate them from the rest of the pack. A high IQ was used to gauge intelligence, but now employers and leaders alike are gauging intelligence in other ways, and a lot of it is based on emotional and mental maturity. A greater EQ allows people to apply their intellectual gifts, IQ, in a simpler, easier, and successful manner, whether as part of a team or corporation. This has been Emotional Intelligence. Become smarter and more successful by controlling your emotions. Written by Samira Eaton. Narrated by Carlton Smith. Copyright 2020 by Samira Eaton. Production copyright by Samira Eaton. Emotional Intelligence. Building up resilience and mental toughness. Written by Samira Eaton. Narrated by Carlton Smith. Chapter 1. Emotional Intelligence and Myths About It. Does emotional intelligence exist? And if it does, is it of any importance? It initially helps to understand what emotional intelligence is and is not. What emotional intelligence is. People with high emotional intelligence, we believed, could solve a range of emotion-related issues accurately and rapidly. High emotional intelligence people, for instance, can properly view feelings in faces. Such individuals also understand how to use psychological episodes in their lives to promote specific kinds of thinking. They understand, for instance, that sadness promotes analytical thought, and so they may choose to evaluate things when they're in a sad mood, given the choice. People with high emotional intelligence also understand the suggestions that feelings communicate. They understand that angry people can be hazardous, that happiness indicates a person wants to join with others, and that some miserable people could prefer to be alone. High emotional intelligence people also understand how to manage their own and other people's feelings. They comprehend that when happy, an individual will be more likely to accept an invite to a social gathering than when sad or scared. Does emotional intelligence exist? To test whether emotional intelligence really exists, my colleagues and I developed a number of capability procedures of emotional intelligence. Doc Caruso had trained in intelligence research and had joined our group in 1995. Our team wanted to see if we could measure emotional intelligence capabilities, if they enhanced with age, a characteristic of intelligence normally, and if emotional intelligence abilities together formed a cohesive intelligence. If all of those conditions were met, emotional intelligence probably would be an intelligence. One sort of test question we developed asked test takers to identify the emotions uttered in a photograph of a face. For example, to know that unhappiness may be indicated by a frown. Another sort of question asks people how psychological reactions unfold. For instance, George was miserable, and an hour later he felt guilty. What happened in between? Choose one. A. George accompanied a neighbor to a health appointment to assist the neighbor. B. George lacked the energy to call his mother and really missed calling her on her birthday. High emotional intelligence test takers recognize that alternative B, the missed birthday phone call, would better account for George's change in state of mind from sadness to guilt. The ability to answer such questions properly seems to enhance as children grow older. Additionally, such questions cohere as a group. People who do very well at some products tend to do well on others as well. For these reasons and others, emotional intelligence is now believed to exist and is considered by many to be an established intelligence. What emotional intelligence is not? Emotional intelligence is usually claimed to be many things it is not. Journalistic accounts of emotional intelligence usually have related it to other personality types. Emotional intelligence, though, is not agreeableness. It's not optimism. It isn't joy. It's not calmness. It is not motivation. Such qualities, although essential, have little to do with intelligence, little to do with feelings, and almost nothing to do with actual emotional intelligence. It's specifically unfortunate that even some skilled psychologists have puzzled emotional intelligence with such personal qualities. My colleagues and I advised in a recent American Psychologist short article. Groups of widely studied personality traits, including intents, such as the need for accomplishment, self-related ideas like self-control, psychological qualities like joy, and social styles like assertiveness, could be called what they are, instead of being blended together in haphazard-seeming assortments and named emotional intelligence. Is emotional intelligence a better predictor of success than IQ? Journalistic accounts have propagated yet another misconception about emotional intelligence, that it is the best predictor of success in life. EI is definitely not the best predictor of success in life, as was once suggested on the cover of Time magazine in the United States. My associates and I never made such claims. Those claims emerged instead from a flurry of journalistic accounts between 1995 and 1998. My colleagues and I carefully analyzed such journalistic claims, and it ended up being clear that they were based upon misunderstandings of psychological science. A regional newspaper covered my concerns about a popular book on the topic. The newspaper's 1995 headline read, "UNH prof who originated deal with emotional intelligence calls claims in book outrageous." I penned many more critiques afterwards. That said, I really believe emotional intelligence is quite important. It broadens our notions of intelligence. It helps us predict essential life outcomes, and it can be used to help people find the right work and relationships for themselves. Chapter 2. Emotional Intelligence or Personal Intelligence. It was Aristotle who urged theorists, and by extension today's scientists, to sculpt nature at the joint. Think of how carving a Thanksgiving turkey at its joints acknowledges the bird's standard parts. My conception of personal intelligence is an effort to carve a crucial group of intelligences using significant limits. I've chosen 3 intelligences to compare: personal, psychological, and social, because they're hot intelligences. They deal with hot info to which we're personally reactive. Hot info might burn us, warm our hearts, or make our blood boil. Feelings are hot. Many elements of our self-concept are hot. Social controls and social power are hot. To further develop the idea of these 3 intelligences, I'm going to define them as I view them. Personal intelligence concerns our understanding of the personality system itself, our capability to reason both about our own character and the characters of other individuals. Personality, in turn, is the company of our major psychological systems, our intentions and feelings, thoughts and knowledge, strategies and styles of action, and awareness and self-discipline. Emotional intelligence is the ability to reason validly with emotions and with emotion-related info, and to use emotions to enhance thought. It includes a coherent set of skills. Others have added ideas like super-optimism, persistence, and passion to describe those with emotional intelligence, but those terms specify intents, not emotions, and attempts to measure such qualities suggest that they're not connected to the ability to reason about emotions. Social intelligence is the capability to comprehend social guidelines, customs, and expectations, social situations, and the social environment, and to recognize the exercise of impact and power in social hierarchies. It also includes a grasp of intra- and inter-group relations. Other researchers may sculpt up these parts of reasoning differently. For example, Howard Gardner positions self-understanding as an intrapersonal intelligence and comprehending others as a social intelligence. He also added social expectations, social power, and the like to interpersonal intelligence. I actually believe that there are some good reasons to group together our understanding of our own and others' personalities. For example, we use the same language of traits, happy-go-lucky, shy, smart, to define both ourselves and others. We use the exact same reasoning about strategies and goals to assess whether our own strategies and objectives make sense, and whether other individuals' plans and goals make sense, and we can't examine how much of a quality we have, or any other personal quality, except by comparing ourselves to others. For that reason, comprehending ourselves is inextricably linked to understanding others. The framework of these three intelligences. I see these three intelligences as broad intelligences, a technical label in this instance. To understand the meaning of broad in this context, think of intelligences as set up in a three-level hierarchy, rather like an organizational chart with the CEO at the top, managers at the next level, and staff at the bottom. General intelligence is in the CEO position at the top. Broad intelligences like verbal intelligence, perceptual, organizational, originally called mechanical intelligence, memory intelligence, speediness in thinking, spatial intelligence, and other qualities occupy the second level. Emotional intelligence, gauged as an ability, as I've defined it with my associates, may be among these broad intelligences, and so, I expect, could be personal intelligence might be next to emotional intelligence in that second tier of intelligences, or consider that personal intelligence broadens the idea of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence might be moved below personal intelligence. The specific placement of intelligences is adjudicated by their empirical relationships. This makes sense because personal intelligence, relative to the psychological, contributes to the mix, intents, knowledge, plans of action, and self-discipline. I really believe personal intelligence is an effective idea because it helps us to fixate on more parts of who we are than our emotions alone. My colleagues and I are now able to specify the knowledge and reasoning involved in thinking about personality, particularly enough to gauge individuals' ability at it, and that is an advance of repercussion. Once we understand that, we can look at people who are particularly talented in this area and see how they use their thinking about character in their lives. In my book, Personal Intelligence, I've had the opportunity to look at the pertinent thinking people carry out about character in their everyday lives and to see the results they can have on how they fare. I'm enthusiastic that I've learned some aspects of personality from the highly talented individuals I've profiled and from the people my coworkers and I have studied, who measure high-end personal intelligence on lab measures we've developed. Chapter 3: The Solitude of Social Media. Years of research taught my partner and I that there are 3 components of life that are necessary for overcoming isolation. They are a mental sense of community, true emotional and social support, and emotional and social intelligence. What are they? What do we know about them? And how are they impacted by the digital age we live in? The mental sense of community. I'd like to start with the mental sense of community. Why? Just because no matter what, we are social animals. McMillan and Chavez suggest 4 elements that add to a sense of community. They are, to start with, 1. Membership. That feeling of belonging or of sharing a sense of personal relatedness, which includes limits, how people become members, and what the boundaries are keeping others out. Emotional security. The trust and feeling of safety created by limits and addition of the right people. A sense of belonging and recognition, feeling that you fit in and that this is your community. Personal investment, enhancing your sense of community by contributing to the community. And a common sign system, sharing symbols like a sports team jersey or gang colors that strengthen your sense of community. 2. Impact. The second element is impact, or a sense of mattering. It needs to work both ways, with you feeling that you have impact over the community, and the community having impact on you. And for a community to have impact on you, it just has to end up being a location that you care about. It has to provide you with value that you don't want to lose. 3. Incorporation and fulfillment of needs. This, our third element, just means that by joining a neighborhood, you get what you wished to get by joining. You need to feel rewarded in some way for your involvement in the community in order to continue to contribute. 4. Shared emotional connection. This, our last factor, pertains to all healthy communities having a story. Members share a history of experiences together and the belief that there will be more experiences together in the future. These experiences form a long-term emotional connection. That's why a neighborhood that goes through a dilemma usually comes out much stronger, simply because they've now shared a tight spot, creating a strong psychological bond among themselves. Psychological and social support. Our second element of life needed to conquer solitude is psychological and social support. Research has recognized 4 kinds of psychological and social support. Emotional support. Offering and getting care, love, trust and empathy, and respect and adoration. We can see the connection to attachment theory, that people are the happiest and most effective when that they have 1 or more trusted individuals they can confide in. Crucial support. Offering and getting tangible goods and services, like cash, groceries, finishing work that was designated to somebody else, allowing use of a person's car, etc. Educational support. Providing and receiving information or advice in a time of need, especially in issue-solving circumstances. The wealthiest source of this form of support is typically from specialists, for example, health professionals, attorneys, accountants, and so on. But let's not forget this kind of support provided by loved ones. Appraisal support. Communication of essential information and feedback vital for self-evaluation. Psychological and social intelligence. Finally, our third needed component. So much has been written something about emotional and social intelligence. However, many individuals are still puzzled about what they really mean. The best way of understanding them is to think of a 5-rung ladder. The higher you rise on the ladder, the more you can see and understand. You cannot, however, skip a sounded. You need to master each sounded before you can rise to the next. And what are these rungs? They are in ascending order. Self-awareness. For example, recognizing someone's feelings and their influence, knowing somebody's strengths and limits, and having a strong sense of one's self-worth and capabilities. Self-regulation, meaning keeping disruptive feelings and impulses in check, maintaining requirements of honesty and integrity, being responsible for an individual's actions, flexibility in dealing with change and being comfortable with novel ideas, approaches, and new information. Motivation, meaning striving to enhance or meet a standard of excellence, readiness to act upon chances, and determination in pursuing goals despite obstacles. Social awareness, for example, sensing others' feelings and viewpoints, and taking an active interest in their issues, sensing others' development needs, and reinforcing their capabilities, cultivating chances through different sorts of people, and reading a group's emotional currents and power relationships. Social skills, or using efficient persuasion tactics, listening freely and communicating convincing messages, negotiating and fixing disagreements, inspiring and directing individuals and groups, initiating or handling change, dealing with others toward shared goals, and creating group synergy and pursuing collective goals. Wow, that is rather a list. To find all or even a considerable part of all of these life parts on social networks seems to be a rather tall order. It's not surprising that increasingly more people feel like Mark, who talked about part 1 of this blog site. I find the entire dynamic of Facebook sad. A photo goes up, people comment glowingly on it, and then you like the comment. It's just endless narcissistic supply. A lot of the friends are not friends at all. They're hardly associates. I erased my Facebook account a while back and now realize that 90% of the content was drivel, including but not limited to mine. It's an incorrect connectedness. So, is all lost? Do we simply slide into depression or disconnect from all social networks? What can we do to overcome loneliness and create significant relationships, which includes in this digital age? Chapter 4. This essential skill will help your child succeed. Bold kids tend to lack a characteristic called emotional intelligence, EQ. Emotional intelligence, EI, is the ability to determine, assess, and control the emotions of oneself, of others, and of groups. An absence of emotional intelligence is essentially an absence of psychological maturity and self-awareness. Daniel Goleman promoted the concept of emotional intelligence, which he specifies as our ability to understand, use, regulate, and manage our feelings as key determinants of our life success and joy. Emotional intelligence seems a key predictor of kids' ability to develop appropriate peer relationships, get along in the house, develop a well-balanced outlook on life, and to reach their academic potential at school. Having the ability to manage your emotions is important to learning, attention, and memory. The term includes the following 5 qualities and capabilities. 1. Self-awareness. Knowing your feelings, acknowledging emotions as they take place, and discriminating between them. 2. Mood management. Managing emotions so they relate to the present situation and you react appropriately. 3. Self-motivation. Gathering up your feelings and directing yourself towards a goal, regardless of insecurity, inertia, and impulsiveness. 4. Empathy. Acknowledging feelings in others and tuning into their verbal and nonverbal cues. 5. Handling relationships. Dealing with social interaction, conflict resolution, and negotiations. It's probably true that if a child is struggling, he or she has lower than normal levels of emotional intelligence, which is a huge reason life is so tough for him or her. Or it just means that they haven't developed it yet. In short, your kid's lower EQ limits his or her capability to use 2 key coping skills: calming down and solving issues. Therefore, many of the important things your child chooses not to do, for example, be more self-aware, thoughtful of others, and to control his impulses, could actually be things he cannot do at this time. The more you understand your kid's psychological immaturity and constraints, the more you can begin to work around them rather than clash with them. I encourage you to consider yourself your kid's feeling coach. By seeing yourself in this way and taking on this role, you can influence and teach thinking skills involved in emotional intelligence. You may ask, yes, but isn't he just born inclined to a particular personality? The answer is yes, but research in neuroplasticity maps how our brains are changing as we learn and grow. A child's genetic makeup could favor moody or consistently mellow, shy, or outbound, risk-taking or cautious, positive or cynical. This holding true, still don't overlook how you can help your child to stretch and grow and gain EQ. Here's 3 ways to help your child learn how to be more mentally intelligent. Coach him to recognize when he's stressed. The first step to minimizing stress is acknowledging what tension feels like. Share how your body feels when you're under stress and ask your kid or teenager what goes on for them. You can also share the quote by Sir William Osler, "Our bodies weep the tears our eyes refuse to shed." You can ask things like, how does your body feel when you're stressed? Are your muscles or stomach tight or aching? Is your breath shallow? Are your hands clenched? Teach your child how knowing your physical reaction to tension will help manage tension when it occurs. Help your kid recognize her tension response. Everybody reacts in a different way to tension. If your kid tends to become angry or upset under stress, she will respond best to stress relief activities that silent her down. If she tends to end up being depressed or withdrawn, she will react best to stress relief activities that are promoting. If she tends to freeze, speeding up in some ways while decreasing in others, she'll need tension relief activities, such as giving a pet affection and attention that provides both comfort and stimulation. Encourage your child or teen to find the stress-busting methods that work for him. Your best way to lower stress rapidly is by engaging several of your senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Every person responds in a different way to sensory input, so you really need to find things that are relaxing and/or energizing to you. This is an example. If your child is a visual person, he can alleviate tension by surrounding himself with uplifting images. If he responds more to sound, you could find a wind chime, a favorite piece of music, or the sound of a water fountain helps to quickly decrease his stress levels. Be patient, as emotional intelligence doesn't increase in just several days. Keep in mind not to take it personally when your kid is reactive and bold. Be patient all the time. It happens to literally everyone. All parents understand how this feels. Chapter 5. How to use your emotions to build relationships that work. Understanding your attachment style and how it leads you to view or not view social threats, communicate with others, and process emotions is half of the battle when it comes to developing and maintaining healthy relationships. The other half of the fight involves using feelings efficiently to solve social problems, rather than enabling your feelings to use you and hijack your thought procedures, i.e., having emotional intelligence. Mentally based solutions will often be unwise. To put it simply, they just won't work. Consider this example. Your in-laws do not respect your limits, continuously shame you by pointing out your home decorating and parenting flaws, and expect you to jump to their service whenever they think they want something. Your spouse or wife refuses to take sides, and you do not believe that he or she stands up for you enough. A lot of your interactions with your in-laws leave you feeling declined, hurt, or angry. Your strong feelings are excruciating and tell you that you have to fix the circumstance, and fix it now. Your feelings, especially your anger, tell you that they, the emotions, need to be lowered, And how better to release and lower a feeling than by expressing it, right? Anger wants you to snap and yell, "Back off," and take your shaming and boundary-violating selves back where they came from. And do not ever disrespect me like that again. It feels good, doesn't it? Well, perhaps for several minutes and even hours, but then what? Now your in-laws really have proof that they're right. And how can such an angry individual be a great parent? And they go on to believe that you would not have gotten that upset unless you realize that your decorating and/or parenting abilities actually are deficient. Not only that, but you're disrespectful and completely fail to really appreciate all the practical guidance and assistance they've given you over the years. So what's the net result? The next time they see you, they seem to look down on you even more, and back you go to feeling furious again. So, how did that anger expression interference work for you? Most likely not too well. But you can learn to do it differently. Here's how. Step 1. Realize the distinction between idea and emotion. I normally begin treatment sessions by asking my client what his or her mood is. For some people, this is a rather challenging activity. I get the answer like, "Fine, I'm having a really good day," or "Things are falling apart." Though, as I explain to my clients, these exemplar statements are thoughts. Feelings involve a physical feeling in your body combined with your explanation of that feeling, corresponding with the canon-barred concept of feelings. When you take a test, for instance, you may be nervous or ecstatic. However, the difference in physiological experience relates more to how you're clarifying your muscle stress and pounding heart than any considerable difference in the physiological response. So, learn how to read your body hints and to label or name your own psychological experiences. That will help you with the next step. Step 2. You're not your emotions. Understand that you are not your emotions. Your emotions are physiological experiences and explanatory thoughts that are usually activated by some external or pictured event. And you absolutely have a right to your feelings. Your emotions can never be wrong. They're based upon the thoughts that are running through your mind. But your understandings and thoughts, for example, the explanations you make up for why things happen, could be inaccurate, and acting upon your feelings will often not get you what you want. A way better way is to look at feelings as information. View your emotions as information. Your emotions are not outright facts about a situation. Simply because you feel angry after a person says something to you in the hallway does not immediately mean that this individual is attacking you or deserves retaliation. The key word here is automatically. If you view your emotions as data, you might initially realize, "I'm having a strong anger feeling in my body." Then you may look at how intense the gut feeling is. For example, moderate inflammation to rage. At this point, you would benefit from asking yourself what you were thinking right before you started feeling upset and what words are running through your mind in the present. In this case, your psychological experience suggests that you perceived a hazard. Step 3. Having the ability to separate your thoughts and feelings should enable you to get enough distance from the emotions so that you can think clearly. Ask yourself, what is the threat? It's very important to be knowledgeable about whether your feelings are offering data about a very real threat versus a pictured danger. A lot of us have, at a little time, had strong psychological responses to circumstances that we later realized didn't exist. Likewise, we really need to be knowledgeable about the timing of our psychological information. Does the information connect to a future risk or a present danger? Lots of people will imagine an unfavorable result 2 weeks in the future, for instance. They'll imagine the negative outcome to the point that they'll start having an unfavorable emotional reaction right now in the present. In this particular case, your feelings are responding to an imagined threat. Who knows? Maybe when 2 weeks pass, the situation will not even appear. In this case, we would have experienced negative emotions needlessly. The psychological information was not reflecting the reality of the circumstance, but rather what we were thinking about the situation. So, try to remain in the present with your emotional experiences. If you use your emotions as data sources, you are, by meaning, assuming that the data is dependable and valid, or consistent and precise, respectively. So, here's where attachment styles come back into the picture. Each style is related to a different level of reliability and validity of emotional information. If you have a safe and secure style, your psychological reactions are probably well adjusted, not too weak or too strong, and your thoughts probably reflect the reality of the situation quite well. In this particular case, it's safe to use feelings as good information on which to, at the very least partly, base decisions. If you have a preoccupied attachment style, however, your physiological emotional experiences are very likely to be too strong. In this case, your psychological information is likely to exaggerate the threat, or love for that matter. If you do not understand this about yourself, then you're very likely to accept your feelings as showing the truth of a circumstance. Accepting your feelings as precise facts may lead you to act upon them without adequate planning. So, if you have the preoccupied style, you always need to expect your feelings, giving you false positives, and overemphasizing the risk. Realizing that your emotional system is excessively sensitive should allow you to recalibrate and use your feelings as pieces of information that you won't take as undisputed facts. If you have a dismissing attachment style, your emotional experiences are likely to be silenced. Not having a psychological experience in many situations will lead you to miss out on important data, specifically about social interactions. If you're missing a crucial piece of information, then the decisions you make are very likely to be flawed and underinformed. For this reason, the dismissing person ought to pay extra attention to even small psychological experiences, especially sadness and anxiety, and understand that they might not have the full picture. If you have a chaotic or worrisome style, your feelings could vary rapidly and intensely, therefore be unreliable as sources of data about a circumstance. If you're going to use feelings to help your relationships and resolve problems, you most likely really need a reality checker. Such an individual could be a close confidant, coach, or therapist. The crucial thing is for that person to be safe enough that you can share both your psychological experiences and the thoughts that underlie them without fear of disclosure. You'll also really need to be able to tolerate feedback, indicating that your emotions are responding more to your thoughts than to the truth of any given situation. Most people's emotions and habits make flawless sense if you understand what they're thinking. In conclusion, understand your attachment style so that you can calibrate your psychological data and ascertain its reliability. Then, realize that your emotions will not hurt you. It's what you think of a scenario that actually causes pain. Also understand that all of the others you deal with also use psychological information in making their choices. So, when you have an unpleasant experience with a person, just remind yourself that the other individual could have been acting upon unreliable data and might not yet have learned her or his attachment style or how he or she is emotionally adjusted. Knowing this can allow you to gain some mental distance from both your own and other individuals' feelings. And then you can discuss your thoughts and emotions openly without decreasing or providing unnecessary weight, which in turn should allow you to have more intimacy and health in your relationships. Chapter 6. Building Emotional Intelligence for Better Relationships. Emotional intelligence, or the capacity to reason about emotions and psychological info, and of feelings to boost thought, is necessary for comprehending our own and other people's emotions so that we can enhance social relationships. Have you ever enabled yourself to get worked up in a conference and then lamented chewing out a colleague, or saying a disrespectful or snarky comment to your boss? Have you had a heated argument with your partner, only to cool down later and wonder why you ever let the little issue you were having blow up into something huge. Have you ever made a rash decision while mad, scared, or upset, only to regret it later? These are all problems of low or poor emotional intelligence. High emotional intelligence is linked to better job performance, working better in teams, increased creative skill, retention at work, and accepting change. Beyond the office, mentally intelligent people typically enjoy better interpersonal relationships at home. According to Dr. Nicola Schutte and her team, emotionally smart people have a tendency to be better at perspective taking and self-monitoring. They're also more cooperative and have better social skills. In a research study from the early 2000s, her team revealed that people who thought their partners were mentally intelligent had higher marital fulfillment and expected more satisfaction in their relationship in the future. People who are emotionally smart understand 4 essential things. 1. They have the ability to read others' emotions. This is really difficult, especially when dealing with people who aren't very emotion-forward. It's easy to tell a person's miserable when they're weeping, but how can you tell somebody is sad when they're attempting to hide it? Emotionally intelligent people can, and with practice, you can too. 2. Emotionally intelligent people are also able to understand and control their own feelings. And this means that they're in touch with what they're feeling, rather than packing it down, mislabeling it, or brushing it aside. The control of those feelings is really key. This means being able to wait to show your frustration at your boss till after the meeting, because you know the consequences of showing it at the specific moment you initially feel it. It also means holding it together long enough to be there for a brother or sister when a caretaker is diagnosed with cancer, even if you're feeling the exact same amount of fear and unhappiness they are. 3. Emotionally intelligent people comprehend that their thoughts develop their feelings, and that facilitating and controlling thought has the ability to reduce the power of their emotions. Moods and emotions can also boost certain kinds of thinking. For instance, understanding you're better able to handle dispute when you're calm, and make choices when you're not upset. 4. Finally, emotionally smart individuals comprehend the connection between their actions and other individuals' emotional responses. This is an example. They know that breaking a promise will lead to others feeling hurt. Building emotional intelligence is a really tough task, but it's a good way to improve how you relate with others. One way to build emotional intelligence is to observe your thoughts. Watch how your thoughts connect with your feelings throughout the day. Thoughts release substances in the brain that fuel the way we feel about things. Once we notice the connection, we can work to reduce the negative emotions we experience by not giving power to the thoughts that create negative emotions, and by fixating on increasing the thoughts we have that are related to positive emotions. Come to realize which things will work best for you to relax you down. Is it going for a run? Going for a walk around the block? Calling a friend? Going through some yoga series? Spending 10 minutes meditating with your office door closed? Figure out what works best, and after that, actually put it into practice. If there's a challenging and/or negative individual you have to be around every day, be proactive in your interactions with them. Before speaking, fixate on the positives that could originate from the conversation. Ensure you're in a positive place yourself before you see them, and do not let them pull you into an unfavorable place. Chapter 7. Increasing Emotional Intelligence while Decreasing Procrastination. A study released this month demonstrated that a 4-week program increased feeling identification and management. Our newest research revealed a strong negative relation between emotional intelligence and procrastination. This may be a new opportunity for procrastination intervention. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, or EI, describes an individual distinction in the perception, processing, regulation, and utilization of emotional information. It's a construct that records emotional competencies. Those individual distinctions have been conceived of as knowledge, capabilities, and traits. I will not enter into these differences here, other than to say that emotional intelligence includes what we now know about our emotions, our own and others, what we can do with this knowledge, for example, methods for handling emotions, and how normal it is for us to act in an emotionally intelligent style, a characteristic perspective. The most important thing about emotional intelligence, no matter how it's interpreted, is that it belongs to a range of steps of well-being, lifestyle, occupational success, health, and relationship quality. EI is a necessary ingredient of life, success, and happiness. Increasing emotional intelligence. 4 co-workers from Belgium, Delphine Nellis, Jordi Koidbach, Moira McCallajak, and Michelle Hansa, teamed up on an intriguing intervention study. They employed the involvement of 37 psychology students, average age 20.5 years, and appointed them randomly to one of 2 conditions. 1. Training group, 15 men, 4 women, who got a 4-week program created to increase their emotional intelligence, and they completed a battery of surveys. And 2. Control group, 15 women, 3 guys, who simply finished the questionnaires. The survey package was administered 3 times. 1. Right before the first session. 2. At the end of the 4th session for the training group. And 3. 6 months later, post-training follow-up. The questionnaires included steps of feeling regulation, regulation of others' feelings, emotion recognition, and psychological understanding. The emotional intelligence training intervention included 4 sessions of 2.5 hours each over 4 weeks, with individuals split into 2 littler groups, 10 and 9 participants respectively. The training was based on Mayer and Salovey's model of emotional intelligence, with a focus on 1. Perception, appraisal, and expression of emotion. 2. Emotional assistance of thinking. 3. Understanding and examining feelings. 4. Reflective regulation of feeling. Throughout the program, specific focus was placed on methods to improve emotional regulation and emotional understanding. These sessions were based on short lectures, role plays, conversations, and readings. Participants also finished an everyday diary of emotional experience that they analyzed because of the concept explained in class as part of their learning. The results. There were no differences between groups just before Session 1 on any of the steps. In the author's words, the significant finding of the research study is that the training group, but not the control group, scored substantially higher on quality emotional intelligence after the training. The training caused a considerable enhancement in feeling identification and feeling management, self and others' feelings. A major finding of this study is that all positive changes remain substantial 6 months after the intervention. Taken together, our results suggest that some emotional capabilities and routines could be successfully improved, even using a relative short training. The authors also acknowledge certain substantial limitations in their research study. However, their results are interesting and provocative. Why this interest of procrastination academic? Eric Heward is a finishing graduate research studies with me at Carleton University. I was very intrigued by Eric joining our research group as he had done his undergraduate thesis work in the area of emotional intelligence. Eric has just completed the first in a series of studies exploring the relation of emotional intelligence to procrastination. Not remarkably, he found a strong negative relation between emotional intelligence and procrastination. Higher emotional intelligence scores anticipated lower procrastination, and this is partly moderated by a number of fascinating variables. I'm going to write more about this research study quickly. Ramifications and concluding thoughts. I believe that procrastination, the needless and unreasonable holdup of a designated action, is primarily a result of poor psychological control capabilities. This relation is reflected in Eric's data. The most current study summarized above is really promising regarding a method that might help to lower procrastination. To the level that we can raise an individual's emotional intelligence, we might also help him or her lower procrastination. Obviously, this all waits for further research, which Eric is well prepared to conduct. In the meantime, I would fixate on emotional intelligence intervention as a pretty good place to start if procrastination is a problem in your own life. A really good counseling relationship can enhance our emotional intelligence and our ability to deal efficiently with our emotional lives, especially our ability to control emotions so that we do not give in to feel good for short-range gain and long-lasting pain. This has been Emotional Intelligence, Building Up Resilience and Mental Toughness, written by Samira Eaton, narrated by Carlton Smith. Copyright 2020 by Samira Eaton. Production copyright by Samira Eaton. Emotional Intelligence. Benefits and facts about creativity, financial success, and better relationships. Written by Samira Eaton. Narrated by Carlton Smith. Chapter 1. Why Emotional Intelligence is So Essential. In 1993, John Carroll proposed a three-stratum model of intelligence to define the most extensive study of cognitive abilities available at the time. At the top of Carroll's model was G, or general intelligence. G, in turn, could be broken down into 8 categories, including fluid intelligence, spatial and rational on-the-spot thinking, taken-shape intelligence, vocabulary knowledge, reading understanding, and so on, and 5 more areas including broad memory, broad speediness, broad visual analysis, broad auditory intelligence, and so forth. Carroll and others made the point that G relied on a broad number of subsidiary intelligences. One fair conclusion from Carroll's work was that G was far wider than most our existing intelligence tests measure. 15 years after Carroll's work, I foresee that there's a further group of second stratum intelligences past the surprising new abilities that Carroll himself had cataloged. These new abilities, which escaped Carroll's attention because they were too occasionally measured up to that time, are what I describe today as hot intelligences. Hot because they handle personally relevant, meaningful, and typically pleasurable or painful information. Info about whether we're hot lovers or hotly tempered, fiercely defensive, or warmly open. These hot intelligences include psychological, social, and useful intelligence, among others. How emotional intelligence helps influence life outcomes. The hot intelligences supply us with a more complete image of information processing, but they also boost our capability to anticipate many life results. Recent reviews, for instance, suggest that emotional intelligence, the most heavily looked into of the group, anticipates a number of crucial social outcomes. Those high in emotional intelligence have more rewarding relationships with friends and more effective relationships at work. These predictions are above and past what can be made with other character variables, such as the cognitive/cool intelligences. Can emotional intelligence be improved, and does it matter? Should you make an attempt to boost your emotional intelligence? First of all, a quibble. Psychologists mean something very particular about raising an IQ. They mean raising your capacity to carry out precise information processing in a given area. I think what the majority of people mean when they inquire about raising emotional IQ is more like, can people enhance themselves by acquiring knowledge about feelings? The answer to the raise your EIQ question is unknown, but the answer to whether it's worth getting knowledge about feelings is definitely yes, although I'm speaking a bit ahead of the research curve here. Many develop their knowledge of economics, baseball, foreign languages, algebra, everything else all the time. So I don't think it's at all questionable to say that you can find out about emotions. Moreover, there are now a lot of sources of dependable info about feelings, varying from publication posts to emotions textbooks. And will this help your life? That's a trickier question. If you're interested in emotions, discovering them will please your curiosity. If you depend on emotional knowledge in your job, finding out more about emotions would likely help. Whether learning more about feeling will enhance your social relations to the degree obtained by those higher in emotional intelligence is uncertain. The research is ongoing, its conclusions unknown. In the meantime, it may be enough to learn more about whether your emotional intelligence is high or low, and to adapt accordingly. If the idea that emotions communicate info is new to you, read up a bit on the topic and see if emotions interest you. If you don't care, let it go and develop some other mental capacities. As Carroll's work and the theories of others suggest, many mental abilities make up intelligence, and you could prefer to find out about what interests you the most. That could involve something other than emotions. It could be discovering spatial relations, verbal understanding, or social reasoning. You're likely to support your interest in learning in a part that intrigues you, which is more likely to bring you gains over the long term. Chapter 2. Is it best to be mentally smart or mentally strong? Although the idea of emotional intelligence came into existence in the 1960s, it didn't become widely well known until 1995, when Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, ended up being a well-known bestseller. Over the years, lots of people have misinterpreted Goleman's statements, however. While he does argue that emotional intelligence can give people a competitive advantage in certain environments, he's clear that a high EQ won't necessarily result in higher scholastic achievement or better SAT scores. Those things depend more on IQ. Goleman identified 5 parts of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand your feelings and drives, and also their influence on others. Internal inspiration, a passion to work that exceeds money and status, like inner version of what's very important in life, or the happiness of doing something. Self-regulation, redirecting disruptive impulses and moods, and the ability to think before doing something. Empathy, the ability to understand the emotional makeup of others, and the determination to treat them according to their emotional reactions. Social skills. Social abilities include proficiency in managing relationships and an ability to build rapport with others by finding common ground. What is mental strength? The term psychological strength is usually used interchangeably with mental durability. However, depending on how one defines psychological durability, there's a likelihood they're not exactly the same thing. Psychological strength is often used when people are describing people like elite athletes or Navy SEALs, and many of them are checking their bodies to the limitations by seeing how much pain they can endure. However, the majority of us don't really need to work on a broken ankle or physically daunt our opponents, so that kind of toughness is not a skill most of us really need in everyday life. Being mentally strong isn't about acting rough. It has to do with being aware of your feelings, learning from unpleasant experiences, and living according to your values. Psychological strength has 3 main components. Managing your thoughts. Regulating your thoughts includes learning how to train your brain to think in a valuable manner. That might mean neglecting self-doubt or replacing self-criticism with self-compassion. Handling your emotions. Knowing your feelings permits you to understand how those emotions impact the way you think and behave. It could include embracing feelings, even when they're uncomfortable, or it may be about acting contrary to your emotions when those emotions don't serve you well. Acting productively. Choosing to act that will improve your life, even when you have a problem with inspiration or delayed satisfaction, is key to being psychologically strong. The big difference. Emotional intelligence belongs to mental strength. However, mental strength exceeds emotions and addresses the thoughts and habits that impact the overall quality of your life. Mental strength involves developing everyday routines that build psychological muscle. It also includes quitting bad habits that hold you back. The good thing. Anybody can increase their emotional intelligence and build mental strength, and those abilities will serve you well professionally as well as personally. Chapter 3. Emotional Intelligence Makes Creativity Happen. A new paper in the Journal of Creative Conduct shows the power of emotional intelligence to make creativity happen. My coworkers and I at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence teamed up with the FOSS structure on a survey of representative sample of close to 15,000 people across the USA and found that emotionally intelligent supervisors develop an environment that benefits creativeness and innovation in those they work with. What do emotionally intelligent employers do? First, they're proficient at reading workers' feelings, like seeing when a person is upset or dissatisfied, or when they're fretted about changes at work. They not only can read emotions, but acknowledge them explicitly. Second, they help staff members carry their emotions to accomplishing crucial objectives. They motivate excitement and they model decision-making that takes into consideration both positive and downhearted voices, and concerns and hopes behind them. Third, emotionally intelligent supervisors understand how different choices or events impact individuals' experiences at work. And finally, they're able to effectively manage their own feelings and help employees when they're upset or disappointed. Our just-published Yale study asked 3 groups of questions. One group of questions asked people to describe their supervisor's conduct. That's an example. How usually does their manager notification if a person is feeling upset about a work decision? How usually does their manager produce enthusiasm to encourage others? Another group of questions asked about individuals' emotional experiences of work. We asked them to describe how they usually feel about their work in their own words, and also asked how typically they experience a long list of specific feelings, from feeling content, appreciated, and proud, to feeling disappointed, upset, or discouraged, and more. Finally, we asked to what degree they have opportunities to grow and make progress at work, and how typically they're creative at work, meaning contribute new ideas or original ways to achieve work goals. The study results show that when supervisors acknowledge that employees have feelings and that these psychological experiences matter, the work climate ends up being more positive and encouraging. Employees define dramatically different emotional experiences if they had managers who acted in emotionally intelligent ways or not. The quality of relationships spilled into feelings about workers' responsibilities and jobs, and that in turn affected creative skill and development in what they achieved. Our research study suggests that managers' emotional intelligence is a job resource for their staff members that helps both their wellness and successful performance at work. When people were asked how they feel about work in their own words, we saw that work was associated with both positive and negative feelings. People commonly experienced feeling good and proud, stressed out and disappointed, worn out and tired. Still, 2/3 of the top feelings mentioned by those whose managers were emotionally intelligent were positive, while 70% of the most common feelings discussed by the ones whose managers were not emotionally intelligent were negative. The details are even more interesting. People whose supervisors were emotionally intelligent mentioned being very happy 3 times more regularly than being stressed. They defined feelings associated with growth, that is, being challenged, fulfilled, feeling inspired and delighting in work, and feeling appreciated. Research in the psychology of work and organizational conduct shows that these feelings create the kind of environment that's conducive to ideal engagement and growing. In contrast, those whose supervisors do not really show emotional intelligence usually said they were annoyed and stressed out. These workers reported becoming angry. They said they're irritated, worsened, irritated, and mad. On top of that, they were also feeling underappreciated or underappreciated altogether. How do supervisors and leaders make a real difference for their staff members' capability to be creative? Organizational conduct experts Jing Zhao and Jennifer George have shown that emotionally intelligent managers know that emotions provide info about ourselves, the environment, and those around us. Emotionally intelligent supervisors have the ability to see worker frustration, recognize that dissatisfaction communicates info about a real issue, and can find a way to approach this issue as an opportunity for improvement. Emotionally smart supervisors can manage their own and workers' emotions to help with creative work. They can recognize when people are excessively optimistic and can provide useful feedback to stop settling on ideas prematurely and inspire persistence. The Yale research study says that supervisors can develop a climate where employees have opportunities to grow and are inspired and motivated in their jobs. Supervisors who acknowledge that staff members can't leave emotions at the door, who recognize employees' feelings, comprehend where they're originating from, and who help workers manage their feelings, will have both happier and more creative employees. The results matter for anybody who influences others, such as instructors working with students, or parents or caregivers with their kids. The psychological climate we develop will impact both how those around us feel and what they have the ability to do. Chapter 4. Signs that your partner lacks emotional intelligence. People with high emotional intelligence, or EQ, tend to make better relationship partners. Does your partner have high EQ? Consider these 12 signs that somebody lacks emotional intelligence. 1. Not able to control their emotions. Mentally smart people have the ability to manage and control their emotions. If your partner is vulnerable to snapping in anger or gets excessive giddy for no reason, she or he likely lacks this core aspect of EQ. 2. Unaware about your emotions. The capability to read other people's nonverbal psychological cues, like facial expressions, is a critical component of EQ. If your partner can't read your obvious displeasure or thinks that your happiness is really contempt, there will be issues making psychological connections. 3. Can't maintain friendships. High EQ individuals have strong networks of good friends and associates. If your partner is unable to make or maintain good friendships with friends and associates, this is a sign of low EQ. 4. Always has a poker face. While reading others' feelings is necessary for EQ, so is the ability to show your own. If you can never tell how or what your partner is truly feeling, especially if you're typically good at reading other people's feelings, it's very likely that your partner is missing this crucial element of emotional intelligence. 5. Is emotionally improper. Making jokes at a funeral, getting angry over absolutely nothing, not seeing that he or she is angering somebody. These are signs that your partner doesn't comprehend the social workings of feelings and emotional expression, which is another crucial aspect of EQ. 6. Can't manage sadness. A failure to manage other people's emotions suggests an absence of emotional intelligence. Low EQ people have particular difficulty in responding to others' negative emotions. 7. Is emotionally tone deaf. A good idea of feeling is communicated through tone of voice. If your partner can't notice your inflammation or pleasure from the next room, it might be an indication of a deficit in finding emotions and voice tone. 8. Can't truly be understanding. Empathy and sympathy involve acknowledging others' emotions and reflecting back proper psychological concern. That's a complex skill that suggests high levels of emotional intelligence. 9. Has no volume control. Of course, we're talking about psychological volume here. Too loud psychological responses, whether positive or negative, suggest trouble in controlling emotions. 10. Is completely unmoved by psychological movies. Whether they're love stories, thrillers, or horror films, a really good sign of low EQ is having little bit emotional resonance with a film. 11. Trivializes emotions in general. Low EQ individuals are often rather knowledgeable about it and will therefore minimize the value of emotions, saying that what truly matters is cool, calm logic and cognition. Do not be tricked. Feelings are not only a vital part of communication and relationship development, they're critical for effective thinking, particularly when it comes to dealing with crises or risk. 12. Doesn't get pet the dog. Dogs are social animals with a vast array of emotions and psychological displays. If your partner appears unaware of your dog's emotions, it may signify low EQ. Chapter 5. Why the emotionally intelligent may earn more money. When psychologists initially proposed the idea of emotional intelligence and its related procedure, EQ, they said that this is the kind of intelligence that actually matters in order to succeed in life. Also described by some as street smarts or useful intelligence, EQ was conceived of as an option to book smarts, as assessed by standard intelligence tests, IQ. There was some evidence in support of these claims, which in turn became the basis for what amounted to an EQ revolution. IQ was out, and EQ was in. The jury was still out, though, on just how much of an advantage EQ could supply in helping people become materially, if not emotionally, in their life accomplishments. As Miami University of Ohio's Joseph Rode and Associates note, there are few systematic studies of the relationship between emotional intelligence and career success, in spite of strong interests in popular press. The studies that do exist concentrate on short-range results that didn't produce really appealing results to reinforce claims of EQ's career-boosting potential. Recognizing the need to attend to more methodically, and over the long run, the possible benefits of EQ, Rode et al. Developed a theoretical model that would account in time for a role of EQ in work environment success. Their model, EQ, should be connected to the capability to build social capital in the form of social support networks. In particular, people high in EQ should have the ability to find coaches who would, in turn, train them in relevant job abilities. Possessing these abilities, the high EQ workers should be able, then, to attain the higher job levels that produce higher wages. The authors used a brain powers structure in which they defined EQ as representing a cross between traditionally defined intelligence and emotions. Many people high in EQ can identify, understand, and manage their emotions in ways which enable them to communicate well with others, think about the issues they face, form relationships, and maintain those relationships gradually. Having the ability to manage your feelings, as you may expect, is an important tool in a range of contexts, but especially in the work environment. Despite of where you work or spend time outside the home, you need to handle politics. In the words of the authors, in any company, workers should compete for limited resources by proactively stabilizing power relationships and browsing the company's social and political environment. You may notice this especially when you join an existing group of people who work in the exact same office, shop, or department. From figuring out who will give you secrets to telephone and IT support, you need to navigate this new environment and learn how to adapt. The more emotionally sensitive and mindful you are of the complex relationships in your new site, you'll fit in better, quicker, and more efficiently. People who are low in EQ, by contrast, make consistent pains out of themselves, and you'll do all you can to keep from them. The overbearing boss, the nosy food service worker, or the intrusive receptionist are no fun to be with, and can even make your life incredibly undesirable if they choose. The people who talk too long, who are rude in conferences, and who seem to enjoy tossing obstructions in your way, likewise will hardly make it to the top of your appeal list. With a person high in EQ, in addition, you'll head out of your way to be practical and supportive. Whether it's making the effort to show where to grab a treat, make a cup of tea, or find the closest restroom, you'll not mind stopping what you're doing to show a person new the ropes. Thankful, appreciative, and properly friendly, this tutti of yours will make you feel good about yourself and what you're doing. It was this logic that led Rode and his partners to propose that EQ has its helpful influence on wage by means of the route of mentoring. Simply because people high in EQ are so aware of their own needs, you'll enjoy helping them, but they'll also reach out for help from those who stand to offer them useful guidance and support. They'll know enough of what they do not know, simply put, to look for a senior person to give them assistance. Being good at relationships, in addition, will make them better able to form strong bonds with their coaches. Impressively, Rode et al. Had the ability to check their model using a follow-up or lagged design, in which individuals first provided information while they were still in college. They finished the EQ step in their junior or senior years. The resulting sample consisted of 126 people with data spanning the 11 to 13 years between the two testings. As the authors anticipated, EQ in college predicted whether individuals had obtained a work coach. The people who had mentors also earned more. Going beyond salary, just because EQ must be associated with the ability to deal with complex relationships, manage tension, and make better decisions, the authors tested a design in which the EQ influence was combined with job level, low or high. As it ended up, for people in low-level jobs, EQ had no influence on salary, but those in higher job levels earned more the higher their EQ scores. As the authors observed, EQ is especially important for people as they rise the supervisory ranks when these advanced skills are needed. You could not think that all employers are that emotionally smart, but all other things being equal, it does help to have good leadership skills, capability to impact others, and the capacity to tolerate ambiguity. Being high in EQ might not make you wealthy, obviously, but the findings of the Miami University et al. Team suggest that it will position you better for a course to development. Once on that path, fulfillment might mean having more than a big pretty paycheck, but it's also likely that you'll derive more emotional enjoyment from your relationships and capability to flourish. Chapter 6. The interplay between high EQ and anxiety. Having a high EQ doesn't always mean that a person isn't sometimes anxious or depressed. Truth be told, the person may be more susceptible to bouts of anxiety simply because he or she is in touch with awkward feelings. In tune with one's own feelings and attuned to others, a person with high EQ is self-aware and compassionate. Typically, this is challenging, simply because these capabilities may cause short-lived anxiety. Aside from that, emotional attunement and self-awareness enable a person to connect heartily in an interpersonal relationship, but may lead to depression when a significant attachment is severed. An individual with a high EQ is often protected enough to tolerate the awkward emotions that tax a person's ego and cause short but extreme anxiety. An example could be the following. Say Jenny is frightened by a coworker who is highly competent in a region in which Jenny feels deficient. In a satisfying, the colleague announces she used the unique skill set to be successful with a prominent client. Jenny feels a tint of envy and insecurity. Yet because Jenny is mindful of her feelings, including the painful ones like envy and insecurity, she has the ability to manage the feelings proficiently. She decides to approach the coworker and ask her for resources, tutorials, and personal insights on how to grow the desired know-how. The colleague is both flattered and useful. Jenny gets to work and is stimulated and inspired. Her consciousness of an unpleasant emotion allows her to do something efficient with it. Alternatively, say Jenny has a low EQ. She's separated from the painful feelings that threaten her self-esteem. Using extreme deflection and forecast, she automatically wards off any emotion that threatens her ego. Rather than having an awareness of her insecure and jealous feelings, Jenny acts on them. At the time of the meeting, she snaps and misshapes the info, implicating the associate of lacking team loyalty. Outside the meeting, Jenny discreetly aligns the team with her and against the innocent colleague. This isn't only unfair, but devastating to the team and organization. Essentially, everybody loses, which includes Jenny, who doesn't grow professionally. Being attuned to other people's feelings is necessary, but also could activate short anxiety. Take, for example, Ron, a person with high EQ. Ron senses a coworker is angry. Upon picking up the negativity, Ron immediately feels anxious. Ron questions if he did something to upset his good work friend. An individual with a high EQ is often liable because of a high level of self-awareness, so she or he readily self-reflects. Contemplating possible bad moves, mistakes, or miscommunications, Ron thinks about past interactions. This self-analysis is uncomfortable but important. Ron instantly understands the colleague has been working a good deal of overtime that appears to be neglected. Ron himself just recently returned from a lengthy getaway. Even though Ron recognizes he did nothing wrong, he wants his coworker to feel better, so he approaches the colleague and says, "I observed you're working really hard and exceeding and past for the team. I just want you to know I really appreciate and admire your work ethic." The colleague marvels but easily accepts the support Ron offers. He confides in Ron and says he's going through a divorce. Simply because Ron is attuned to his feelings, he senses the associate's emotional pain and is empathetic. "I'm so sorry. That truly is rough. You must be in a good deal of pain. Is there anything I can do?" The worker suggests it helped just to tell a person. He thanks Ron. Ron's capability to be attuned to another individual's emotional state, along with his capability to look at himself, helped him sort out how to fix a tense situation and help a work friend. Both parties move forward feeling more trust and support in one another, which might lead to a more effective and efficient workplace. Self-awareness is also an important ability of a person with a high EQ. Though the propensity to self-reflect is at times awkward and might trigger anxiety, the outcome is well worth it. For instance, say Lisa contacted an individual from outside her organization and invited the individual to work for her. Later that day, Lisa is called by the individual's boss, who's very upset at Lisa for trying to poach her employee. She feels disrespected and communicates her belief that Lisa acted unprofessionally. Rather than being defensive and deflecting blame or playing the victim to gather compassion and keep away from responsibility, Lisa feels horrible. She comprehends how this person feels. She might have felt similarly if the roles were reversed, so Lisa authentically owns her lapse in judgment and apologizes. She conveys a sincere comprehension of how her actions impacted the individual and takes full responsibility. Lisa is anxious for a few days following the conflict, simply because her sense of self took a hit. Still, Lisa's strong conscience, intense regret, and ability to own her mistake permits her the chance to grow, evolve, and keep from a comparable error in the future. Personal development is born from both self-awareness and insight. A lot of the characteristics of an individual with a high EQ are also the qualities that promote deep and meaningful relationships. Closeness is generally accomplished by comprehending another individual's emotions. Self-awareness permits an individual the opportunity to be liable and authentically own a mistake in the relationship. This means he or she usually doesn't make the same hurtful error 2 times. The capability to be attuned to another person's feeling states permits an individual to be conscientious, considerate, thoughtful, and kind. A deep and close bond is created with loved ones. An individual with a high EQ heartily connects to better halves. Yet if the attachment is traumatically severed, the individual suffers deep and incapacitating loss. Like an oak tree whose root has been severed, the loss is gut-wrenching. On the other hand, an individual with a low EQ may find it easy to end a relationship quickly. Just because he or she may be less compassionate, minimally self-aware, and detached from feelings that threaten his or her self-esteem, she or he could connect less deeply. A shallow attachment style makes it simple for the person to pull the carpet or desert a partner for another partner promptly and without inner turmoil. Hence, it may be very important to be selective and invest in a partner who has a high EQ. A person with a high EQ is a person who's able to tolerate the uncomfortable emotions that tax a person's sense of self. This is an important capacity that enables positive relationships, personal growth, and hearty and significant attachments. Even though anxiety typically accompanies such capacities, the result exceeds the cost. Chapter 7. The distinction between narcissism and self-confidence. On the surface area, many individuals with a strong narcissistic streak might appear ultra-confident. They love being the center of attention and usually believe they seldom make errors. Most promote their own perspective and do so without inhibition. This steadfast belief that they're right, upstanding, and respectable is strong. Some boast that they do not have a filter because they feel entitled to say whatever they want. Yet a lot of these characteristics suggest the presence of an extreme and robust defensive structure, not self-confidence. Though defense mechanisms are normal and needed, when they're impenetrable, stiff, and static, they might be a barrier to the deeper emotional capacities which permit self-awareness, conscientiousness, and attunement to others. This points to the possibility that the individual who seems confident may actually be profoundly insecure and might protect himself or herself from a consciousness of insecurities with a large and unconscious defensive system. Like a force field, this structure stays out uncomfortable emotions that threaten a vulnerable sense of self. Deflection, projection, distortions, and denial act in unison to protect the individual from the pain of responsibility, insight, and empathy. Extreme deflection and projection allow the individual to expel accountability and place blame in other places, contributing to the person's desire to control and police others. A situation might arise when the individual can't deflect responsibility because he or she has been caught red-handed. In this circumstance, the person could unconsciously utilize the cognitive distortion called a victim position so as to leave effects. For instance, Lisa is caught submitting a worker's work as her own. When she's faced, instead of feeling deep regret, She weeps and tells her boss her family pet is ill and she hasn't had the ability to concentrate on work. Lisa uses an emotional challenge to excuse a wicked deed. An individual must always attempt to access support when going through a difficult time. However, using a personal difficulty to excuse a different behavior that hurts another is an indication that the individual might be utilizing the victim position cognitive distortion. A second example highlights the unconscious and severe use of deflection and projection. Rick is enjoying attention from others. He welcomes the recognition and usually hangs around talking and texting with people who appreciate him. Yet when Sarah, Rick's partner, heads out for a girls' night, Rick accuses her of being offensive and a flirt. He calls her repeatedly throughout the night to look into her and chooses a fight when Sarah arrives home. Sarah is ashamed, upset, and sick of the dispute, so she stops going out with her friends. In this example, Rick does not have insight and projects his need for adoration and attention on Sarah, which permits him to feel entitled to fix, control, and completely dominate the circumstance. Severe defenses change a person's version of reality. The individual sees the world through a distorted lens, which typically allows him or her to feel like a victim. Badness is unjustly predicted onto others, and the individual feels honorable and upstanding when he or she can set another person straight. A sense of privilege and an important need to punish or fix others is regular. Often this person is able to quickly align other people with him or her through the use of a common scapegoat. Additionally, a person who's truly positive walks with defenses that are flexible and malleable. He or she has a more protected sense of self that has the ability to tolerate awareness of insecurities and vulnerabilities. Softer defense mechanisms allow agonizing feelings to penetrate a person's conscious awareness. Although the uncomfortable emotions tax a person's sense of self, they might allow for the development of insight, self-awareness, responsibility, and empathy. Those experiences could feel unpleasant, but they allow a person to evolve as a person and embody qualities that create and sustain healthy relationships. They also show an individual could have a high EQ, or psychological ratio. Take the example above. Lisa made a mistake. She experienced a serious lapse in judgment. Nevertheless, if Lisa were really confident, she would not really need to employ the defensive weapons, which prevents her from experiencing authentic remorse. An active conscience and extreme remorse are healthy capabilities that motivate an individual to take some responsibility for her or his actions, make amends, and repair the damage that was done. Instead of playing the victim in order to amass sympathy for herself, Lisa takes responsibility for her mistake, conveys a sincere understanding of how her mistake hurts others, and goes to great lengths to apologize. Simply because burning regret hurts, the experience is not easily forgotten, and Lisa is less likely to repeat the mistake in the future. Taking the second example, say Rick has softer defenses that enable him an awareness of his insecurities. He opens to Sarah. "Sarah, you're so beautiful. Sometimes I worry I'm unsatisfactory for you. Maybe it's silly, but I worry you'll fall for someone else when you go out with your friends." Hopefully Sarah values Rick's ability to open and be susceptible. She may offer empathy and support. "Rick, I only have eyes for you. You mean everything to me. That doesn't just disappear when a Luke Bryant lookalike walks through the cafe door. I love you." An awareness of insecurities permits a person to cope with these insecurities in a healthy way, which may promote healthy self-regulation. If a person is unaware of his or her insecurities, he or she might be automatically employing deflection and projection to an extreme. A person who is highly and strictly safeguarded might not be able to access the much deeper and awkward feeling states which tax his or her fragile sense of self. Yet it's these feeling mentions that enable self-awareness, insight, and empathy. Separating between the victim stance, cognitive distortion, and authentic responsibility is also critical when evaluating an individual's EQ. Insight, self-awareness, and empathy are capabilities that enable an individual to grow, develop, nurture, and empower those around him or her. Chapter 8. Cult or Competitive Benefit. Several months ago, a headline caught my eye on LinkedIn. Judging by the numerous comments and rebuttal reactions, I was not alone. Obviously crafted to raise eyebrows and clicks, it proclaimed, "Emotional intelligence is overrated." After hiding my initial skepticism and decreasing my raised eyebrow, I read through the post to examine writer Adam Grant's points. After all, I appreciate Grant and his work in the field of emotional intelligence. The article tells a cautionary tale of a CEO who puts a good deal of faith in the significance of emotional intelligence, only to be shown wrong not once, but 2 times by Grant and his team, who performed explores hundreds of salespeople. We're meant to see this story as proof positive that any intelligent corporate leader should desert demonstrably high emotional intelligence, EI, as any sort of requirement, or at the minimum, move it to the touchy-feely fields where you need to handle feelings every day, like sales, real estate, and therapy. 3 paragraphs in, Grant provocatively defines anyone who believes in the credibility of emotional intelligence as coming from a cult. Not precisely the dispassionate position of a person performing objective research, but it works at stimulating further reading and argument. At the 5th paragraph, I comprehend where Grant and I, and others like me, diverge in our understandings of emotional intelligence, measurement, and application. How do we measure emotional intelligence? Grant's short article seems to indicate that gauging emotional intelligence is standardized and agreed upon by professionals. It's not. As other professionals like Kenneth M. Nowak have clarified, there are multiple recognized measurements of emotional intelligence, and all but one type are backed by detailed studies that validate their validity as crucial factors in professional success. According to Daniel Goleman's rebuttal, an informing study looked at all of the data on these 3 different ranges of emotional intelligence as predictors of job performance. It learned that if you used steps of emotional intelligence from the 2nd or 3rd categories, you can gauge how EQ enhances performance, but not if you use the step pointed out in Grant's short article. Grant's chosen assessment, which gauges somebody's ability to properly recognize feelings mainly by looking at images of human faces, is developed to gauge how well a person can comprehend, read, and translate emotions. However, it does not examine social fluency, how well an individual acts upon that ability or applies that intelligence. So, it's not unexpected that when you look at a test that doesn't measure the application of emotional intelligence, you're not going to find a favorable influence on profession or business objectives. After all, a toddler might have the capability to recognize and correctly interpret feelings, but that certainly will not stop him from tossing a tantrum. He lacks the necessary psychological regulation. And all of us recognize that full-grown equivalents of tantrum have a negative impact in the workplace and in our lives in general. The reason so many people believe in the credibility of emotional intelligence has absolutely nothing to do with being members of a cult, and everything to do with sound judgment and observation in the real world. Yes, data can at times reverse the apple cart of common sense, but in this case, the other approaches of emotional intelligence measurement are definitely associated with greater success in both professional and personal spheres. These research studies substantiate what our own common sense, and the CEO in Grant's example, tells us is actually true. Emotional intelligence matters deeply. Let's talk terms. In an effort to fixate on the qualities and habits that will and do result in enhanced professional results, let's talk about other terms that may be more reliable, terms like applied self-awareness, social fluency, and behavior intelligence. The distinction between these expressions and the harder to pin down emotional intelligence is that they include action rather than a passive state of being. Those terms specify somebody who not only has emotional intelligence, but knows when, how, with whom, and to what degree to apply it. Picture the C-level executive who knows precisely how to communicate criticism to team members in a way that inspires them rather than crushing them, or the usually animated and excited leader who suddenly gets quiet in order to communicate the gravity of an occasion. Think of the high potential who remains poised, calm, and in control when challenged in a conference, or the CPA who has a larger and more stable client base than her peers because she knows how to provide bad news without creating alarm. These skills are not only essential to a little, choose piece of fields and people. They're the skills that benefit anybody in any arena. Think of the ability to write well. It may not be the first skill you think of when you think of science, but anyone in the clinical community will tell you that the capability to write well will set a scientist apart from similarly intelligent researchers who are poor writers. Similarly, you may not really need to enhance your behavioral intelligence to get by professionally, but is getting by really your goal? In my work, I found so many people for whom intelligence and capability were never the problem. Those people have excelled in lots of ways, have shopping lists of achievements, and yet something is holding them back. They actually have stalled. They find themselves sitting at good enough, but it's not satisfactory for them. Behavioral intelligence, social fluency, the ability to apply emotional intelligence, these are the teachable skills that can launch people into greater professional and personal success. As Nowak skillfully concludes in his article, it's not how wise you really are that matters concerning work and life success, but how you are smart. This has been Emotional Intelligence, Benefits and Facts about Creativity, Financial Success, and Better Relationships. Written by Samira Eaton. Narrated by Carlton Smith. Copyright 2020 by Samira Eaton. Production copyright by Samira Eaton.